Welcome back, everybody, to the deep dive. Fear. It's something we all deal with,
Oh,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
So today we're going to be looking at how our brains learn it,
Okay.
unlearn it,
Interesting.
and maybe even inherit it. Some trending tidbits from neuroscience for you.
I like it.
Yeah. We're going to be pulling from this awesome YouTube video.
Okay.
It's from Andrew Huberman. It's called Erasing Fears and Traumas Based on the Modern Neuroscience of Fear.
Wow.
I know, right? Really gets you in the mood for a relaxing podcast, right?
That's quite a title.
Yeah, it's a long one, but it's an amazing video, super in-depth. We're just going to be focusing on the most interesting parts.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I get this. One of the things we'll be talking about is that you
Okay.
can't just get rid of fears.
Really?
Yeah, you have to actually replace them.
Ah, interesting.
I know, right? Wild stuff. And we'll also touch on how lifestyle choices and stuff can impact your
Interesting.
fear response.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be a good one.
Mhm.
So to get started, let's just kind of set the stage here. What's the difference between stress, anxiety, fear, and trauma?
Oh, that's a good question. So,
And how do they all kind of connect?
okay, so think about this. Imagine your brain's like this big alarm system, right? Constantly on the lookout for anything that could be dangerous.
Right.
When it sees something that it thinks is a threat,
Okay.
you get all these physical responses, heart racing,
Yeah.
fast breathing.
That makes sense.
You feel like all your senses are going crazy.
Right.
That's stress and anxiety.
Had it.
So then fear is when all that stuff gets linked to something specific.
Oh, okay.
Like,
so like a snarling dog. Or,
right, a snarling dog or like...
It looks speaky.
Yeah, public speaking, or even just the memory of something bad that happened.
Like a past trauma or something.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's like stress and anxiety are like the building blocks. And then fear is like what they build.
Exactly. And then there's trauma.
Yeah.
Trauma is when that fear response, it just gets stuck.
Oh, wow.
It's like that alarm keeps going off even when there's
Oh, okay.
no danger.
So it's not just about the event itself. It's about how your brain and your body process it.
Exactly. It's all about how you internalize it and hold on to that.
It reminds me of this thing. I read it in some work by Dr. Kerry Ressler.
Okay.
He was talking about memories as protective or dangerous.
That's interesting.
Yeah, like some memories, they might make you afraid, but they're actually protecting you.
Oh, like keeping you from making the same mistakes.
Yeah, exactly. But then others, they can really be harmful.
Right, they can kind of limit you.
Right. Exactly. And that brings us to this part of the brain, the amygdala.
Okay.
It's often called the fear center of the brain.
Right.
But Huberman has this kind of different way of looking at it.
Okay.
He sees it more as part of a
threat reflex, the system that's always looking for danger.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it's less about just feeling fear and more about being ready to react.
Exactly, yeah. It's about staying safe.
So it's just constantly scanning, ready to go.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is that
Okay.
this whole system, it's like a blank slate waiting to be programmed.
Oh, wow.
Remember how we were talking about Dr. Ressler's idea about memories being protective or dangerous?
Yeah.
Well, those memories, that's what shapes how your threat reflex responds.
Whoa, hold on. So you're saying that your actual experiences that change how your brain reacts to threats.
Exactly.
But it's crazy. How fast does that even happen?
Fast. Really fast. Imagine going from dial-up to 5G in a second. Wow. That's how quickly your brain can learn fear. It's called one-trial learning.
Trial learning, okay.
Yeah. So unlike those dogs in Pavlov's experiments,
The ones that needed to hear the bell and get the food over and over again.
Over and over.
For humans, we can get scared from just one really intense thing happening.
Oh, wow. Okay, this makes so much sense. My friend, she got her car broken into in San Francisco just once.
Wow.
And now she's terrified to drive there.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. Just one event can really change how you see things.
And it's it sticks with you.
It really does. It's sadly, our brains are better at remembering the bad stuff.
Really?
Yeah, it's like Velcro for the bad and Teflon for the good makes unlearning fear a bit of a challenge.
Okay, so if our brains are so good at learning fear, are we stuck with it forever?
Mhm.
Or is there any hope of
No, there's definitely hope.
and learning it?
It's possible. It might not be easy, but it's definitely doable.
Okay, that's good to hear. So what can we do about it?
Well, Huberman's video has some good ideas about that.
All right, I'm all ears. Is it all about, like, facing your fears head on, like exposure therapy and stuff?
Exposure therapy is a big part of it, yeah.
Okay.
But there are a couple of key steps to make it really work.
Okay, what are they?
So the first one is you got to extinguish the old fear response.
Extinguish.
You can do this by really vividly, like, going over the event over and over.
So, like, not trying to forget it, but
Yeah.
changing how your brain reacts to it.
Exactly.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
And what's the second step?
That's where the real magic comes in.
Yeah.
You got to replace that old fear response with a new positive experience.
Oh.
And it has to be something that's connected to the original fear.
So it's not just about, like, getting used to the fear.
No.
It's about building a new
Exactly.
positive association with it.
Exactly.
Okay, so, like, with my friend who's afraid of driving in San Francisco,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be enough to just have her drive around until she's less scared.
Right.
She'd
Yeah,
have to
right.
actually do stuff she enjoys there.
Exactly.
Like go to concerts or try new restaurants and really connect those good experiences with the fear of driving.
Perfect example. It's like taking that old negative file on your computer and replacing it with a new positive one.
Oh, I like that. That's a really helpful way to think about it.
It makes it seem a little less daunting, right?
It does, yeah. So unlearning fear, it's
Yeah.
definitely manageable.
It is. And there are even more tools we can use.
Oh, really?
Yeah, even Huberman was surprised by this one.
Oh, okay, now I'm really curious. What is it?
It's something you do all the time without even thinking about it, moving your eyes.
Wait, are you serious? Moving my eyes can help me unlearn fear.
I know, it sounds kind of out there, right?
Yeah, especially coming from, a science background.
Yeah.
It's a little hard to believe.
I get it. I was skeptical too at first.
Okay.
But there's this therapy, it's called EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing.
EMDR. Okay.
And it's been getting some attention as a treatment for trauma.
Interesting.
At first I was like, how can moving your eyes back and forth actually do anything, you know?
Right, it seems a little too simple.
Exactly. But then I saw some research, both with animals and people, showing that those side-to-side eye movements, they can actually, like, calm down the amygdala.
Really? So you're saying that if I just move my eyes back and forth like this,
Yeah.
it can help calm down my fear response?
It can, yeah. It turns out that those eye movements we make when we're looking around, they actually have a calming effect on the brain.
Wow, I never would have guessed that. It's like our brains are wired to find a sense of safety by looking around.
Exactly. It's like a way of checking that everything's okay.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder what other little things we do every day might be impacting our brains without us even realizing it.
Right. It's amazing how much is going on under the surface.
So we talked a bit earlier about the idea that some people might be more, like, prone to fear and trauma than others.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, is there anything we can do about that?
Yeah, that's a good question. It gets into some pretty interesting stuff with genetics. Huberman was talking about this research on inheriting a predisposition to trauma.
Wait, hold on. Are you saying that trauma can actually be inherited?
That's what some researchers are suggesting.
Wow.
It's still early days in this area of research, but this work by Dr. Ressler, who we talked about earlier, suggests that trauma can actually change your genes.
Okay, so, like, are you saying that these changes could be passed down to your kids or even your grandkids?
Potentially, yeah.
So, like, your traumatic experiences could actually make your children more susceptible to fear and anxiety.
It's not that the specific memory gets passed down.
Okay.
It's more like inheriting a sensitivity, a lower threshold for stress.
So like a family history of heart disease.
Exactly. It doesn't mean you're definitely going to have a heart attack.
Right.
But you might need to be more careful.
So even if you inherit this predisposition, it doesn't mean you're destined for a life of fear and anxiety.
Right, exactly. It just means you might have to be more mindful of your stress levels. Develop good coping mechanisms and get support if something traumatic happens.
Okay, that makes sense. And speaking of support, I wanted to ask about something you mentioned earlier, cyclic hyperventilation.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds pretty intense.
It is. Definitely not something to try on your own.
Okay.
It should only be done with a trained professional.
So what is it and how does it work?
Well, you basically intentionally hyperventilate for a short time,
Okay.
and that causes a controlled increase in adrenaline.
Wait, but isn't adrenaline what triggers that fight or flight response?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that make anxiety worse?
Well, the idea is that by intentionally triggering those sensations in a safe environment,
Okay.
you can kind of get used to them.
So it's like a type of exposure therapy.
Exactly.
Instead of facing the actual thing you're scared of,
Yeah.
you're facing the physical feeling of fear itself.
Exactly.
So like you're teaching your brain that those physical changes don't always mean danger.
That's the idea, yeah. It can help break the link between the physical symptoms and the actual threat.
It's kind of like
Yeah.
taking control of your fear response
Exactly.
instead of letting it control you.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. Now, cyclic hyperventilation, it's
Yeah.
pretty intense, obviously.
Right.
But Huberman also talked about a much gentler breathing technique that anyone can do.
Oh, okay. That sounds more my speed. Tell me about that one.
It's called cyclic sighing.
Cyclic sighing. Okay.
It's super simple. You just take 2 inhales in a row
Uh-huh.
and then 1 long exhale.
Seriously. That's it.
That's it. And you can do it anytime, anywhere.
Wow. That's amazing. And it actually works.
The research is pretty promising.
Okay.
Studies have shown it can help slow your heart rate, lower your blood pressure,
Oh.
even decrease those stress hormones.
And how long do you have to do it for?
Just 5 minutes a day can make a difference.
5 minutes. Okay. I can definitely commit to that. It's a good reminder that sometimes the simplest things are the most effective. You know, we've been talking a lot about managing fear,
Yeah.
but I wanted to come back to something we mentioned earlier. The idea that fear can actually be, helpful.
Oh, absolutely.
Isn't there a time and a place for it?
Definitely. Fear is totally natural. It's been crucial to our survival as a species. It's like a warning system telling us when something's dangerous.
Right.
The key is figuring out when it's actually helping you and when it's holding you back.
Okay, so how do we know when fear is helpful and when it's not?
Well, it comes down to context and intensity.
Okay.
Is the fear in proportion to the actual danger? And is it pushing you to do something to protect yourself?
Mm-hmm.
If so, then it's doing its job. Like imagine you're walking alone at night and you hear footsteps behind you.
Okay.
It's totally normal to feel scared.
Right.
And that fear might make you walk faster or cross the street or call someone.
Right. It's making you take steps to stay safe.
Exactly. But if that fear gets so bad that you just stop going out at night altogether,
Oh, okay.
even if it's a safe area,
Right.
then it's starting to control your life.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. It's like the difference between a smoke detector going off when there's actual smoke
Yeah.
and it going off every time you make toast.
Perfect analogy.
It's annoying and unnecessary.
Exactly. So it's all about balance.
Yeah. We don't want to get rid of fear completely,
No.
but we don't want it to rule our lives either.
Exactly.
So how do we find that balance? How do we tell the difference between helpful fear and unhelpful fear?
Well, the most important thing is self-awareness.
Okay.
Pay attention to your body, your thoughts, your actions.
Hmm.
When you feel that fear coming on, just stop and ask yourself, is this fear actually justified?
Okay.
Is it making me do something to keep myself safe?
Right.
Or is it stopping me from doing things I enjoy?
So it's like becoming a detective of your own fear.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, try to figure out if it's a real threat or just a false alarm.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot today. The science behind fear, different types of therapy, breathing techniques, the possibility of inheriting trauma, and even how fear can sometimes be a good thing.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey.
It has. Before we finish this part of the discussion, I have one last question.
Okay.
We've talked about how fear can be learned,
Yeah.
but can it also be unlearned, like fundamentally? Can we actually change our brains to be less fearful?
Yeah, that's the big question, right?
Yeah, can we actually change our brains when it comes to fear?
Well, the good news is, yeah, we can.
Okay, good.
Our brains are really adaptable, even as adults.
Okay.
It's called neuroplasticity, and it's why we can learn new stuff, form new habits,
Mhm.
even get over things like fear and anxiety.
Okay, so we're not just stuck with the same fears we had when we were younger.
Nope, we can actually rewire those patterns.
That's good to hear. So
What?
how do we do that?
Well, it goes back to something we were talking about before, the stories we tell ourselves.
Oh, you mean like how we think about our experiences, the way we interpret them?
Exactly. Our brains have this kind of like a negativity bias.
Okay.
It's easier to remember the scary stuff, the
Right.
bad stuff.
Right, right.
And that can make us create stories that just reinforce our fears.
Oh, I see. So like if someone has a bad experience public speaking,
Yeah.
they might start thinking, I'm terrible at this, or Everyone's judging me.
Exactly. I'm going to mess up.
Okay,
It's easy to fall into that trap.
totally. Public speaking is a big one for a lot of people. So how do we break free from those negative thought patterns?
Well, the first step is just noticing them.
Yeah, okay.
Pay attention to those stories you're telling yourself,
Okay.
and then challenge them. Ask yourself, is this really true? Is there another way to look at this?
So, like with the public speaking example, you can remind yourself that everyone makes mistakes, or
Yeah.
that most people in the audience are probably more worried about themselves than judging you.
Right. Even experienced speakers get nervous sometimes.
It's about creating a more, like, realistic and balanced perspective.
Exactly. Once you've kind of challenged that negative story, you can start building a new one,
Okay.
a more positive one.
And that's where those new positive experiences come in, right?
Exactly. Each time you face your fear and it goes okay,
Yeah.
you're adding to that new story, a story about courage and resilience.
Like you're rewriting the script in your head.
Exactly. Now, aside from all that, from like reframing those narratives
Yeah.
and therapies like EMDR,
Hmm.
Huberman talked about some natural ways to help too, like supplements for anxiety.
Oh, yeah. Tell me more about those. What did he mention and how do they work?
Okay, so he talked about saffron, inositol, and kava. They've all shown some good results in studies,
Okay.
but gotta say this first.
Of course.
Supplements aren't magic, and you should always talk to your doctor before starting any new ones.
Right. Always good to get professional advice.
Mhm.
So tell me more about these supplements. What's so special about them?
Well, saffron, it's more than just a spice.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Studies show it can actually really help with anxiety, like comparable to some medications.
Wow, I had no idea. What about inositol?
Inositol is interesting. It's naturally found in a lot of foods, but you can also take it as a supplement.
Okay.
Studies show it can also really reduce those anxiety symptoms, like as much as some antidepressants.
Wow, that's impressive. So it could be as effective as medication.
The research looks good, but we always need more research.
Of course.
And the studies use pretty high doses, like 12 to 18 grams a day for a whole month.
Okay, so dosage is important. That's why it's key to talk to a doctor first.
Exactly.
Now, what about kava? I've heard of it, but I don't really know what it does.
Kava is this traditional drink from the Pacific Islands.
Okay.
Been used for centuries to like relax and reduce stress.
Interesting. How does it work?
Well, it increases GABA in the brain.
GABA, right.
That's the main neurotransmitter that calms things down.
So it's like hitting the chill out button in your brain.
Yeah, pretty much. But here's the cool part.
Okay.
It also seems to increase dopamine, which is usually linked to like motivation and reward.
Oh, wow. So it relaxes you, but also gives you a little mood boost.
Exactly. It's unique. Most things that increase GABA just make you sleepy.
Right, right. So kava's kind of special.
It is. But again, more research is needed.
Okay, well, these supplements definitely sound worth looking into, but like I said, talk to your doctor first.
Always a good idea.
Now, before we wrap up, I wanted to touch on something we talked about earlier, MDMA-assisted psychotherapy.
Oh, right.
Can you tell me a little more about that?
Yeah, MDMA. It's also known as ecstasy. It's a psychoactive drug that's been getting some attention for treating PTSD.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Yeah.
But why is it so promising for trauma?
Well, it seems to create this unique state of mind
Okay.
where people can process those traumatic memories without being totally overwhelmed by fear and anxiety.
So it's like it turns down the fear response so they can actually deal with the trauma.
Yeah, exactly. It's like creating a safe space in their own minds.
Wow, that's powerful.
And it also seems to boost oxytocin.
Oh, the bonding hormone.
Right. So people often feel a sense of connection and empathy during the therapy.
That makes so much sense. It creates safety, trust, connection, all those things that are so important for healing.
It really does. It's an exciting area of research.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
But, gotta emphasize this, it's still being studied.
Right.
It needs to be done in a controlled setting with trained professionals.
Absolutely. It's not something to try at home. Well, wow, this has been an amazing deep dive into fear. We've covered so much. What are your final thoughts for our listeners?
I think the big takeaway is that fear is a part of life, but it doesn't have to rule us.
Mm-hmm.
We have so many tools to help us manage it, you know? Therapy, breathing techniques, lifestyle changes, even supplements.
Right.
The more we understand about fear, the more we can take control.
I love that. It's not about eliminating fear. It's about understanding it and using it to our advantage.
Exactly. And remember, you're not alone. A lot of people struggle with this. Don't be afraid to reach out for help.
That's so important. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into fear.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you learned some interesting trending tidbits today and feel empowered to take control of your own fear. One breath, one thought, one action at a time.
Well said.
Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you next time.